I think there's only uncertainty in the fake news. I don't think there's uncertainty. I mean, I've been very rigid, very strong on it, but I will say I'm flexible. Like,
United States President and nemesis to Mark Carney, Donald Trump, did an interview with the NBC show Meet the Press. And they were talking about a lot of things, but there was subjects that they touched on that want to speak to how the things are going with Canada, and also should be looked at by people who maybe can be saved from their own flawed logic, and perhaps can be shown how it is that the reality versus the dream that they're being sold. So I thought it would be appropriate to break down some of this interview for Canadians who want to understand exactly the differences in the two policies, because we very much have two different policies now. We have one, our Prime Minister believes in net zero, DEI and ESG. The American president believes in the opposite of that. So no net zero, no DEI, and no ESG. And the economy, though both economies were basically bottoming out, the American economy is coming back with vigor, even admitted to by the NBC, who's one of the most far left media out there. So we're going to hear him say a couple of things. I'm going to explain to you how that pertains to Canada, or not explain, but I'm going to show you, in my opinion, how that pertains to Canada. We're going to break down some of the things. Now, you may be out there hearing about how he made cracks about 51. He didn't. And how he made cracks about Greenland. He did. But that's not this video. I'm covering a separate video on the importance of that, because the significance of that is bigger than just a bunch of people sitting around watching TV and chewing on potato chips. All right, so let's just take a listen to some of the things that he had to say right out of the gate.
In office, it has been an incredibly busy 100 days. You've signed more than 140 executive orders. You've been focused on the border, the economy, foreign policy.
Wow, he's doing quite a bit compared to what the Liberal government has been doing. I mean, I suppose a trip to France and England was kind of important, though I don't know how it impacted the crises that we have running all over Canada. I still have yet to figure that part out.
Today, better than expected job numbers.
much better. We lost $5 to $6 billion a day with Biden. $5 to $6 billion. And I've got that down to a great number right now in a record time. You know, we're talking about 100 days.
Better than expected job numbers. I've heard Mark Carney say 3 separate times that he said the economy of the United States is starting to show a weakening. And the stock market's crashing. And then here turns around that there's better than expected job numbers, because that means people are going back to work, despite the fact that they're not giving out all these handouts, despite the fact that they've cut off a lot of people on their unemployment or on their food stamps, despite all of the things that you heard the left-wing media screaming and yelling and jumping up and down and banging the drum over. They have more people back to work in the first 100 days than they did through all of the years of the Biden administration. Now, when you hear Trump say things like we were losing this much money a day, I want to explain that to you so that when you hear it, you can understand what he means. So what he's saying is that there was a transfer of wealth. So say the product was made in Beijing and then it was sold in the United States. Well, that product, whoever paid for that product paid it back to Beijing. And so the American money that was made from that product was sent to another country. This is what he talks about when he's talking about lost, right? Because we moved it out of the country, and that transfer of wealth is kind of important. It's kind of significant, and it will have an impact on other people's economies, including Canada's. But on the United States, strictly from the United States perspective and from the global economy perspective, the Americans are making a lot of money, because now that money, instead of going from, say, New York to Beijing, it's going from New York to Oklahoma. That's just a random example. All of that money is now staying inside of the American system, being spent, and investments are being made, houses and boats and cars and groceries and hydro bills, all of that kind of thing. So the money, it wasn't leaving the country, and that's what he means by losing or lost.
The tariffs and everything else, and I think it's actually working out better than we anticipated. Did you see oil prices? Did you see gasoline is now below, in many cases, in many states below $2 a gallon, 198, 199, 197. It didn't matter what they made because they were losing their shirt because of costs. Now take a look at what happened. Oil is down, gasoline is down, groceries are down, eggs. You were the one that asked me. You asked me about eggs. It was the first week. I didn't even know anything about what were you talking about. Egg prices were so high you couldn't buy eggs. They didn't have any eggs. And they said Easter is going to be a disaster. Well, we had Easter at the White House, and we had thousands of eggs, and they were down 87%.
87% decrease in and a staple. The eggs are a staple, right? Eggs, grains, milk. These are the kinds of things that are a staple in every household, no matter what your eating habits happen to be. When he took office, they were 87% more expensive than they are now. 87%. That's like saying 90%. Meaning if it was $10, it's now $8.50 cheaper to buy a dozen eggs. That's incredible. And one of the reasons that he can do what that is happening is because he's managed to bring oil prices down to under $2 a gallon. Now, for those of you that don't speak imperial, there is 3.78 liters per every gallon. So a gallon is essentially one of those 3 bags of milk that we buy. That's essentially a gallon. There are 4 liters, almost 3.78, 3 3/4 liters in a gallon. And if you do the math quick and you do the math round, that's 50 cents a liter. 50 cents a liter. Now, I want you to imagine in your mind how much money you would be saving on your grocery bill if they were only paying 50 cents for a liter of diesel to drive the food to your grocery store, or if they were only paying 50 cents a liter to drive those very same eggs from the farm to the market, or if they were only paying 50 cents a liter to drive the milk from the farm to the market, or if they were only paying 50 cents a liter to deliver your food to your door. How much money would you be saving? So imagine how much money that would be saving you if you were driving your children every day for your routine of drive the children to school, go to work, pick up the children from school, daycare, whatever it happens to be, go home, go to the grocery store. How much money are you saving at that kind of decrease in gas prices? And they get a lot of fuel from Canada. Mark Carney is a net zero, wants everybody in Canada to be driving electric cars. Doesn't want any new pipelines, doesn't want any new projects. You want me to believe that we can't drive an oil pipeline to a refinery in, I don't know, near Ontario so that we could put Canadian fuel in Canadian cars for 50 cents a liter or 40 cents a liter?
But the stock market, look at what's happened in the last short period of time. Didn't it have 9 or 10 days in a row or 11 days where it's gone up?
Prices are already going up on some popular items, tires, strollers.
This is such a dishonest interview already. Prices are down on groceries. Prices are down for oil. Prices are down for all energy. Prices are down at tremendous numbers for gasoline. But what really killed us with inflation was the price of energy. It went up to $3.90, even $4, and in California, $5 and $6, right? Okay. I have it down to $1.98 in many states right now. Even mortgage rates are going down.
Well, but let me give you some examples. These are actual examples. So you're saying the prices that are going down, some prices are going up. Tires, strollers, some clothing in the wake of your tariffs.
Excuse me, that's peanuts compared to energy. Energy is 60% of the cost.
I enjoy the fact that he called her dishonest. I think that when you're a reporter, you shouldn't be trying to sway people's opinions with your own personal slant, that you should stick to the middle of the road. And to compare the idea that tires might be more expensive or strollers might be more expensive to the idea that your electricity has come down 60%, to the amount of fuel that you put in your car has come down 60%. Somehow that doesn't seem like apples to me. That seems not even like apples to oranges. We're talking about, apples and stones or something. Like, they're not even in the same category. To the idea that 60% of your electricity costs, your food costs, you heard him, even mortgage rates are coming down. So what are you talking about with strollers and tires? Like, how desperate and how hard were they looking to try to find these two random little things in the face of the idea that mortgage rates are coming down, how much money you have to spend to put fuel in your car is coming down, how much money you have to spend on your monthly electricity bill is coming down?
They said before talks could happen, the U.S. would need to remove unilateral tariffs. Would you consider dropping the tariffs to get China to the negotiating table?
No, China, and I don't like this, I'm not happy about this, China's getting killed right now. They're getting absolutely destroyed. Their factories are closing, their unemployment is going through the roof. I'm not looking to do that to China. Now, at the same time, I'm not looking to have China make hundreds of billions of dollars and build more ships and more army tanks and more airplanes.
You're not dropping the tariffs against China to get them to the negotiating table. Those tariffs are staying on.
Why would I do that?
Would you lower them?
At some point, I'm going to lower them because otherwise you could never do business with them.
Yeah.
And they want to do business very much. Look, their economy is really doing badly. Their economy is collapsing.
I can confirm their economy is in fact collapsing. Their economy was never that strong to begin with because they are a Marxist economy, so all of the money has to be spent in the central government. I get that some of the central government's best friends were making some money, but for the most part, everybody was living and working in squalor while the government took enough money, as you heard them, to buy nuclear submarines and to buy aircraft carriers and to manufacture and make them. They don't even buy them, they make them themselves, obviously, which is something that Canada needs to start doing. We have to start making our own munitions and our own military. Of course, that will be very difficult to do with Mark Carney and the net zero and the ESG and all of the rest of that. He believes that he has to have exact control over the house that you build, the road that you build, the type of steel that you use, all of the stuff that goes along with that. And I'll cover that differently. This time I want to just compare the two ideas. And I want you to see that because he has stopped purchasing, because he put the tariffs on Chinese products, people have stopped allowing it to come in. From what I'm able to put together, people are in fact losing their jobs in China. There are stacks and stacks of containers just sitting on the warehouses that are not going anywhere. There are ships that are being rerouted to other countries where the product is being sold for pennies on the dollar. Probably Canada is one of them. The Chinese economy was relying so heavily on America, and it's part of and you can see now, because they've stopped importing these products, they're hiring people locally to build them, to manufacture them, to make them. Not maybe every one of them. The dollar store might be feeling might end up with some empty shelves, but other manufacturing and other products are going to be made available to people, and they're made in America, which is why the job numbers are so high. You see how no matter what everybody was telling you, no matter what all of these economists were trying to make you to believe, the reality is much different. Because the reality of a middle-class market will always outstrip any other idea that you've heard. I've read some of Mark Carney's values. The first chapter is all about, he reveals himself to be quite a fan of Karl Marx, and it's all about the history of economics. And I'm like, none of that talks about the free enterprise market. And I don't want to go too far on this one. I just want you to show how I want to show you all as Canadians the idea, the reality of what Trump is doing and what you're being told is going to happen versus what has actually happened.
Pick up a couple of little businesses. What about the car business? They're going to make a fortune because of the tariffs. We've been waiting 40 years for somebody to do what Trump is doing. So why don't you mention the big car industry instead of mentioning somebody that's doing strollers?
Well, I'm just asking you about small businesses. Are there any discussions about giving any relief to small businesses?
They're not going to need it.
Okay.
They're going to make so much money.
Are these tariffs?
If you build your product here. Remember, there are no tariffs if you build your product here. It's very easy. So I think we probably have close to $9 trillion of investments coming into this country in just a short period of time. A matter of a couple of months, we have the largest number ever in history invested in the United States and committed. We have between guaranteed, spoken for, and people that are going to make a decision and announce it pretty soon, close to $9 trillion.
Now you can hear from what he's saying that it's starting to work. I mean, she's mentioning strollers, he's mentioning the auto industry, and she's trying to make him say, oh, what about small businesses? But small businesses are the ones that are going to benefit the most because they can afford to source locally. So now the small business will rely on the other small business, and between the two of them, they'll be able to sell a small product locally, as opposed to the corporations or as opposed to the stores that are paying. I mean, I've always heard small business talk about how Walmart can source a product because Walmart has the manufacturing and owns the factory in China, so they can have their product for a tenth of what the individual who has to now buy it at a markup off the exact same manufacturer that's selling it to Walmart. Now they can go down the street and source it locally like they used to do, like the products before the international corporations decided to ruin the economy and to make everything all about the few at the top and their shareholders, while the rest of the country, the rest of the people did poorly. Especially imagine the people you say they're losing their jobs in China, but I mean, many of them in many cases they're probably been the first time they've been allowed out of their job in months. They're probably in many cases going back to their family's house and telling them that the job wasn't worth it because they're living in squalor. They're manufacturing billions of dollars, but they're living in squalor. And the Chinese Communist Red Party, is building tanks and bombs, and some people are living great, but many of the people that are doing the manufacturing, they are living poorly. That's why you see the Chinese ready, willing, and able to come to the table. And that's why you see Donald Trump refusing to budge, and he's not going to budge on any of the. If you think for 1 second that he's not going to budge on what China provides to the United States in the form of manufacturing, that if he's willing to go through any of the empty shelves that might be as a result in the short term of manufacturing switching from China to the United States, what hope do you believe that Mark Carney is going to have? And what hope did you ever imagine? What did you imagine when you cast your vote that was going to happen? Did you think that he was going to go down there and say, remove the tariffs or else? Or did you think that Donald Trump was just going to say, you know what, I'm not doing any business with China until they do it my way. I'm not going to do any business with Canada until they do it my way. And what did you honestly believe was going to happen? And I suppose if you based your vote on the idea that you understood international economics and international trade and international monetary funding, then I suppose you would have cast your vote for Pierre Poilievre. To cast your vote in terror of something that will never be able to be fixed by Mark Carney was, a poor choice. And hopefully watching videos like this, and hopefully you'll come to your senses for the next time. Because Mark Carney wants to limit how much manufacturing happens. He doesn't want any pipelines. He doesn't want cheap Canadian fuel inside of Canadian pumps. He doesn't want anything happening on the ground that he doesn't have express control over. So how are we going to have the manufacturing that's going to produce anything? All of the product that we currently have is going to be sent down to the United States. Of course, that'll change once all of the companies have moved to the United States. Then there will be no more manufacturing inside of Canada at all. And you'll all be turning to Carney, and he'll be looking for somebody to blame. But he will be the one who's responsible. The Liberal Party will be the people that are responsible. They will be the ones to blame.
Let me tell you the other thing, very importantly, automobile companies, plant after plant after plant, Toyota, Honda, Ford, General Motors, Stellantis. I mean, nobody's ever seen anything like it. And I don't like this, but it happens to be. They're stopping work in Mexico, and they're stopping work in Canada, and they're all moving here.
This is important, though. You're not taking the possibility that these tariffs could be permanent off the table. Some of them.
Oh, I wouldn't do that, because if somebody thought they were going to come off the table, why would they build in the United States? I think there's only uncertainty in the fake news. I don't think there's uncertainty. I mean, I've been very rigid, very strong on it, but I will say I'm flexible. Like with respect to parts made outside of the country, I gave the automobile companies a little extra time. You're talking about 15% and then 10% of the parts put in a car. I gave them a little extra time without penalizing them. And I did that only to help, companies. We're looking to help companies. We want them to thrive and to hire a lot of people, and that's what's happening.
All right, a couple of things out there, Canadians. First of all, of course it's happening. Of course they're moving all of the industry into the United States because the United States has all of the people to buy the cars, and we don't have the economy in this country. And Mark Carney has no idea how to repair the economy. That's why he keeps trying to scare you with saying, oh no, it's going to change. They're already showing this and that. But 11 straight days of records the stock market just went through because there's that much money flowing into the country, because now they understand the certainty of what's going to be happening. They've spoken to their people in those particular companies. They understand where they're going to be building it, and they know now what the value of it is going to be when they begin to get it off the ground. And the fact that they're going to be saving billions in transportation costs is already going to improve the value of the stock. Unfortunately, we picked the wrong prime minister because Mark Carney doesn't want any industry to come off the ground that he doesn't have express permission. And I know I've said it already, but remember that what that means is that there's no small to medium business. That means that you can't just start a business. You have to have his express permission. And if you don't meet the net zero, if you don't meet the green, if you don't start paying that carbon tax, then you're not going to get that company off the ground. Whereas by contrast, Donald Trump doesn't care about a carbon tax. He removed all of that stuff and said, let's build, baby, build. Mark Carney is running around saying, hey, look, the king's coming over to see me. And Donald Trump's like, I don't care what any of you are saying. I'm doing it this way because I know that it will work. And of course, all of those auto industries are moving down. And remember that it benefits Mark Carney's vision, right? He's not going to be trying to stop that. That's why he didn't try to negotiate with the car dealers individually. He just said, oh, no, we're going to make it easier for you to get your EI. We're going to make it easier for you to get insurance, to get a handout. We're going to take all of the tariffs that we're putting on all of these other products and we're going to give them to you. Where Donald Trump is running cheap electricity, he doesn't care that you're putting it on, doesn't bother him that you're manufacturing that electricity with coal, doesn't care. Want to manufacture that electricity with liquid natural gas? That's fine too. Go ahead and do it. Want to build your own your own power plant and your own smelter so that you can have the product for your car a lot less? Yep, go ahead. No problem at all. By contrast, Mark Carney says if you want to make anything from steel, it has to be green. It has to be made with electric arc energy, and you have to buy it from this one exact plant. And don't worry about it. We're going to be trying to sell it all into the EU. Somehow he believes that the EU is going to fall in line with this. It's better to buy it with green steel instead of paying a lot less for it, and you might put a little bit of carbon up into the air. Reform UK just won a whole bunch of seats inside of Britain, and one of their pillars is to stop the net zero chaos. It's one of their things. And so now they're running around like in the regions that they have control. One of the first things they're going to be doing is to stop all of the jobs that are rooted around ESG, DEI, and net zero. So I don't know where you felt Mark Carney was going to be able to change this. I get that you felt like you were fighting Donald Trump because that's what they made you want to believe. And now that you can see where the dust is settling, you can understand that Donald Trump didn't care what was happening in Canada. But the guy that was going to start small businesses everywhere, the guy that was going to kickstart the economy by letting the economy go to whomever had an idea, well, that person lost the election. The only person who won was the person who wants strict control and to limit manufacturing. That manufacturing must meet only his ideology. And if it doesn't meet his ideology because you allowed him to become prime minister and because the NDP will support him for no reason whatsoever, they will be able to pass all of these laws that will stop the manufacturing, that will stop everything that can be done for Southern Ontario, for Northern Ontario, for Alberta, for Manitoba, for Saskatchewan, for many of the regions in this country that used to provide all of this raw material down to the United States, and we still have that raw material that we can be providing to ourselves. Of course, we're not allowed to make anything out of it because for some reason, if you accidentally bend a blade of grass, well, that's it. That's all. The reason that all of these companies are willing to put all of these industries inside of the United States is not because the United States has the population of India or the population of China, right? So why are they doing it then? Well, it's because they have more population with money to spend. You see, in India and China, they have a few wealthy people and everybody else is dirt poor. In the United States, they have a lot of wealthy people, but they have what's known as the middle class, which is a rare thing. People don't understand it because they take it for granted, but it is a rare commodity. And because other countries are terrified of giving up control to the people beneath them, because other countries don't worry about education of their youth and all of the other things that the American country goes for, there's no free enterprise. And because there's no free enterprise, the only country in the world that has the free enterprise, the only country in the world that has that standard of living that provides for everyone to be able to go shopping, not just a select few, but everyone. And because everyone has money to go shopping, every company in the world wants to put their manufacturing there, because Donald Trump says if they don't put it there, then it's going to cost them a lot of money on tariffs, and they're basically throwing money away. Now, I explained all this to you before the election, and I'll probably have to do it again. But I'm laying it out for those that might not understand, that might not be able to see the big picture. Now, the regular viewers of the Canadian Shield know that I'm a firm believer in the free enterprise, and I do not believe that the Marxist system has any place in the economy whatsoever. All right. I've gone on long enough in this video. I don't want to take it too far down the road of basic economics that you would think that a guy who calls himself an economist would comprehend. However, I'm not ideologically driven by this fanciful net zero. So my vision is much more clear. And I hope after watching this, you'll understand that Donald Trump's vision is much more clear and working. Right, that's the part that we need to hold it on to at the end as we come to the end of this video. We need to understand that no matter what anybody's trying to tell you, no matter what the mainstream media is trying to tell you, Donald Trump's ideas are working. And I'll say one last thing. You note that NBC lady was very polite and very kind, which means the corporations are starting to fall in line, because the corporations don't care about any of it. They only go where the money is. All right, I'm going to wrap here. I want to thank you for listening. I'll talk to you next time.